All right, so as salespeople, we have a certain process that we should follow, and we also have, some key activities that are a part of that. There are also some different smaller activities that we can do that are good for us to be effective as salespeople. But there's some small things they're not really like activities, but more just like tips of what to do and what not to do as a salesperson. So what should you do as a salesperson? Well, first and foremost, you need to know your product. There's nothing less impressive to a potential customer than if they ask a question about the product and you don't know the answer. Now, sometimes that may happen, especially very technical questions, but you better be able to get the answer if you don't already know it. And you ought to have a very strong base knowledge of the product. So that's an important tip to do. Know your product. You also need to know your customer. If you don't do your homework to understand the customer's needs, or you don't bother to ask questions about what they need and what they don't need, you're going to be trying to sell them the wrong thing. And that's not going to work at all for them. It's going to really probably be kind of frustrating for them, and it's not likely to end in a sale. So you need to know your customer. You also need to know them so you can build more of a relationship. Next, the approach you take to sales in general ought to be to solve problems. Some people think about sales and they think it's all about like tricking a customer into buying something. That's not good for long-term profit. It's also not good in the short term because they're going to end up dissatisfied. So we need to take the approach of how can we solve problems. This will also help the customer understand why they should buy. Lastly, we do need to be assertive, or maybe confident is another way to say this. If you're not confident in your product and you're not assertive about what the product can do for the customer, that's going to come through, and the customer is also not going to be confident that your product is a good option. Next, let's talk about what not to do, because there's some key things that really can turn customers off quickly, or that can decrease your profitability or your revenue as a salesperson. That first one is don't rely on discounts to close the deal, is what I mean. So don't think that every time you are trying to make a sale, you need to give a better price. That devalues the product. That's also something the customer is going to come to expect, and it also lowers your revenue and your profit as a salesperson. Next, don't talk down to the customer. You may know more about the product than they do, but you don't want to come off as if you think that they're ignorant, or that they don't know what they're doing. That's not going to make them feel good, and it's not going to make them want to buy. On the same token, don't belittle the competition. If your only strategy for making a sale is to tell somebody why the other person or the other option is no good, that's not very convincing. And a lot of people will be turned off by that negativity. Lastly, the key thing is maybe the most important thing not to do as a salesperson is lie. Because the truth is going to come out. If you lie about what the product will do, the customer will find out when the product fails at doing what you said it would do. If you lie about other things, eventually the truth will come out, and that will create a lack of trust with the customer and also a negative experience. So don't do that. Even though, again, some people think sales might be about tricking people, it's really not. And so lying should never be a part of the sales process. If you do these things that I mentioned to do, and you avoid these things that I say not to do, you have a really good chance at being an effective salesperson.